This is Kardec Radio for Teens. Important life-changing events as seen through the Spiritist perspective. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back. We're actually bringing together the diaries of Belinda and Alex for the first time. And just so you are aware, these diaries actually were meant to be together. Both diaries are part of the same book published in Brazil. The diary of Alex is found on one half of the book, and on the other half of the book, on the facing side, the diary of Belinda is found. And you can read either one in either order. And so we're here together to sort of bring back and to remind you of some of the lessons that we learned. We can learn about ourselves, about reincarnation, about ourselves as immortal spirits from these two diaries. And Carol's here with me today.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be back.
So, Carol, could you tell me what are some of the lessons you think you learned from the Belinda story?
What spoke to my heart the most, Mark, was Belinda's perseverance. She came in that reincarnation from a less privileged socioeconomic background. She faced many conflicts inside the home. It was clear to us that her and her sister were spirits that had faced many conflicts adjusting to each other, and it was clear that they were brought together by higher minds in order to learn to love each other. And Belinda had a hard time in that lifetime accepting who she was. But I learned so much from her, Mark, because every time she faced a challenge, she had 1,000 reasons to give up and say no more. But rather than doing so, she always told herself, let me keep going a little more. Let me keep trying a little more, because I deserve to achieve my goals. I believe in who I am. And her courage and perseverance were the driving forces that literally pushed herself and her spirit forward in that reincarnation. So I learned with Belinda that if we have faith as small as a seed of mustard, as said by our own very master, Jesus, we are able to remove mountains. And those mountains, most of the time, aren't physical mountains like the Himalayan mountains. They are instead mountains that we carry within our hearts. Mountains, for example, of fear, mountains, for example, of despair, mountains, for example, of discouragement. And like any of us, our dear Belinda had those mountains inside of her spirit. But with faith and perseverance, with time and effort, she was able to overcome her own limitations. So her reincarnation is a beautiful lesson on determination for all of us.
You know, bringing these two books together, it's also an opportunity to learn about our spiritual family and about the fact that, of course, Belinda and Alex are part of the same spiritual family.
I know, it's beautiful,
and it is
right?
beautiful. And they obviously have had many encounters with themselves, or between themselves, among many lifetimes before we actually get to the end of the Belinda story. Where Belinda is a doctor and Alex is also a doctor, and they meet together in medical school. It took many lifetimes for that to happen. And there's so many interesting facets of that. I wondered for you, I can talk in a little bit, but I wondered for you, what do you think are the lessons that Belinda and we learned from Belinda and Alex's long-standing, continued learning to be together. Their drive to become better, loving people. What do you think is the big message that the authors of this series wanted us to learn about?
Well, thank you. This is a very important question for us to meditate upon, Mark. If we look at Belinda and Alex's latest lifetime, where they are both doctors, as you mentioned, it may seem to us that their relationship is quote unquote perfect, that their relationship could have become a Hollywood movie, that their relationship is like the famous princess meeting the enchanted prince. We could even think of Belinda as the Cinderella and Alex as the Prince Charming. We could also label their encounter as love at first sight. But we can only do that if we have a more limited vision, if we only see ourselves as the bodies that we are temporarily wearing. But if we remind ourselves that we are not a body with a spirit, but a spirit living a material experience, and that we are immortal souls that are constantly enrolling in the school of life, we notice that the result of Belinda's and Alex's joint efforts to better themselves, to face themselves, to work on their own limitations is what led them to have a more balanced relationship in this last lifetime. If we remember from Alex's 19th century lifetime that was described so beautifully by you, we may notice that Alex in that lifetime actually rejected Belinda. The love that he still has for her and had at that point as well was strong, was beautiful, but wasn't enough for him to overcome his pride. In that lifetime, he chose to abide by the conventions of the society and by the social impositions that were connected to his socioeconomic status rather than actually following his heart. So because he made that particular choice and that turning point in his life, he could not fulfill his reincarnatory plan, and he missed the opportunity to be happy with Belinda even sooner. So they were separated as a result of his decision, not only in that lifetime, but in the lifetime that preceded that one. So Alex had to do a lot of work with himself and his own prejudices and train his mind and heart to literally open his heart in order to allow Belinda to become an eternal part or partner for him.
Yeah, the Alex story reminds us of how it seems like certain situations or certain lifetimes bring us into situations where only Spiritism can really help us to understand the learning opportunities and the significance of that. I mean, Alex in the lifetime of the last lifetime that we know of in the Belinda story, which is a contemporary lifetime. Here we are. Here he finds himself in the son of two gay parents. Here he finds himself in a situation in medical school in which he falls in love with someone of a lower socioeconomic class. There's so many things that are happening to him that, in a way, help us to understand the value, and lessons associated with being of humility and of respect for others, and love of others, despite social convention, as you talked about. But it's interesting in the story, since we now have the benefit of looking over 3 lifetimes of his, right? That it takes a long time for him to develop these values. What is interesting in the Alex story for me is that it takes a long time to develop that, but the other important element is it's not an excuse for us, because the Alex story continually reminds us that every lifetime he had, when he made lots of really big mistakes, like when he left Malika because she was a Malika who ends up becoming Belinda, because she was a slave, and being a slave, he didn't feel that Malika was really the socially appropriate person to have as a partner. He rather would abide by the social conventions of the time. It's important to realize that in the story it becomes so clear that that was a choice that he made, a calculated choice. He had free will to make that choice. He chose to move away from that important decision to say, this is the person who I know that I am going to be, is the person that the universe put me together with, but I'm going to make a conscious decision to decide, no, I'm not going to be connected with her. And she ends up dying because of the loss of that connection. It's so interesting. But the important thing is that while it does take sometimes lifetimes to change patterns of behavior, like the pattern of behavior of Alex to continually abide by social conventions, it's important to realize that in every lifetime we have the free will to make the decision that's going to change these patterns, which may reoccur lifetime after lifetime. And that by being involved in Spiritism, by participating and listening to and discussing shows like this, and I hope people can discuss these cases together, because in a way these cases are really important for discussion. I think it would be great if we heard of a listener who actually took these cases and discussed them, or similar cases, and discussed them in a group. If a group of teenagers or young adults had an opportunity to sit down and talk with each other about these cases. That's so important, because we're aware of Spiritism, and that's a gift. And because that's such a gift, there's so many opportunities that we have in this lifetime that we would otherwise not have.
It's interesting, Mark, that you're pointing that out, because you're reminding me of something that the Spirit Emmanuel constantly tells us in his books of meditation and loving and nourishing messages. He constantly tells us not to take learning opportunities for granted, because they are not casual. So what we may term as casual opportunities, or things that whatever we can simply dismiss, are not meant usually for our dismissal. We are here on earth either to inspire others or to learn from others. So no encounter that we may have while wearing the physical body that we are temporarily wearing now is truly casual. God grants us the opportunity to develop 2 wings, according to Emmanuel, in order to become pure spirits. One is the wing of knowledge, where we are able to develop our reasoning and intelligence, and the other is the wing of love and wisdom. So we need both to be able to fly, to reach our highest potential. All of us, because God is love, including Alex and Belinda, are destined to reach that potential. So in certain lifetimes, we are given the opportunity to develop our reasoning very, very much. And in certain lifetimes, we are given the opportunity to develop our ability to love one another very, very much. What I find really a privilege is that Spiritism is not a religion per se. It is a philosophy that is reasoned. How do I know? The basis of this philosophy, as Bia Lopez is showing to us every week, is the Spirit's book, which is a compilation of a little bit more than 1,000 questions answered by the illuminated minds that together with Christ Jesus govern our earth. So now we can no longer argue if we have the courage and the time and the determination to study and study the books and study ourselves. We can no longer argue that we are taking certain actions or making certain choices because we didn't know. And we can no longer argue that we are doing something or making a choice because someone told us to do so. We who have the privilege of knowing the Spiritist philosophy or understanding or vision of life know that there's more to life than just the present moment. And we can actually study the logic of life. And by studying the logic of life, we are developing not only our reasoned faith, but also our ability to love beyond what we have been able to. Because now we are able to see the love of God to prove that there is love and God in every circumstance, because nothing happens by chance. So one of the reasons as I meditate about Belinda's and Alex's learning experiences, I dare to say that one of the reasons why Alex may have been more successful in his last lifetime is because he was able to find this reasoned faith through Spiritism. Does that mean that only Spiritism has the answers? Absolutely not. That only means that we now have a progressive body of knowledge coming from spirits that govern the earth that is available to everyone everywhere, regardless of what they call themselves. So this is the beauty of it. The body of knowledge coming from the higher minds that govern the planet don't belong to Spiritism. They belong to humanity. They are universal truths. And there are other illuminated minds from other philosophies that remind us of the same universal truths. But we are very fortunate, as you've said, to be able to study the same universal truths in such a logical, well-organized, thoughtful, and progressive manner. Why do I say progressive? Because there constantly are more and more books from the illuminated minds coming back to us. In the book Thought and Life by the Spirit Emmanuel, he reminds us that a book, spiritually speaking, is like a dynamo of change, is a catalyst of change. And as we read, learn, meditate, and attempt to apply what we are learning, we create new neural pathways inside of our brain, spiritually and physically speaking. So by embracing new knowledge and by reasoning our faith, by studying universal truths, we actually change the way that we are wired to behave. This is why reincarnation is important, because with every reincarnation, we are given the opportunity to enroll in the school of life and learn more. as we saw very, very clearly in the case of Alex, since we had the opportunity to observe his progress as an immortal spirit throughout 3 consecutive reincarnations.
Yeah. So just a few little quick things that I'm thinking about as you're talking. And again, I don't know if it's related, but just some lessons that I learned from Alex. I think maybe we could sort of give everyone a few little bullet points. One thing is, I thought the Alex story provided all of us with an understanding of the importance of family connection. Belinda's story does as well. Those two themes actually run together in both stories. You know, how we struggle sometimes with our families. We struggle with the recognition that maybe our family doesn't recognize, or we feel like our family doesn't recognize us for who we are, or we feel as if there's a member of our family who constantly causes us trouble. The struggles that we have with family, many of us have, we learn from both stories that there's opportunity there for spiritual growth. That's one important lesson. Another important lesson, I think, that I am just thinking about and going back and thinking about the Alex stories. The second most important lesson, I think that, well, it's hard to say what's first or second, but and that's the dangers of alcohol and the spirits that are brought around someone in drinking alcohol. That lesson in that particular story of Alex's diary, I think, is something that all of us should revisit, because we need to be aware of that. We need to be aware of the dangers of alcohol and the impact that can have on our reincarnation, and the fact that it likely is something that's been affecting us generation after generation after generation, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and that it's so important to remember that the dangers of alcohol and its impacts happen generationally in our families. So it's something that I think is another really important. I would encourage everyone to go back and listen to the alcohol. I think the title I know the title in that Alex diary had alcohol in it. That's something that I think is a very important lesson for all young adults and teenagers to pay attention to. And what for you? What are some of the highlights of the Belinda story you'd like to leave the readers with?
Sure. For me,
Listeners with.
what spoke to my heart is that Belinda showed me the importance of self-knowledge. She spent the beginning of her journey with us trying to hide from herself, trying to hide from who she was, trying to escape from her own thoughts and her own feelings. But the moment she left fear aside and started to study her own emotions, her own thought patterns, her own choices through her free will, and her own decision-making process, when she started looking at her critically but lovingly at the same time, reflecting upon herself, she was able to be strong, to leave fear aside and make a commitment to love. And it was only through self-knowledge that this shift occurred in Belinda's spirit. She learned to let go of fear, because up to that point she was operating primarily out of fear, and she began acting out of love. The minute she began acting out of love for herself, she raised her vibratory tones. She raised her mental current, just like we do when we are switching radio stations. We attune literally to a certain frequency. So when she gave up her fear-based actions, she tuned out of that fear-based station or lifestyle, and she was able to literally give a leap and learn to tune in with love. The minute she started tuning in with love, her relationship with herself changed. And as her relationship with herself changed, she was able to open her heart to make long lasting friends, to engage in self care, to learn to see her family with more loving eyes, and therefore prepare herself to love Alex. So prior to the moment when she learned to love herself, she and Alex couldn't even connect because they were in different wavelengths. So even though they were classmates, even though they were colleagues, they barely spoke to each other. But the internal shift that Belinda experienced as she had the courage to remove the mountain of fear out of her heart literally opened the door for her to realize an important aspect of her reincarnatory plan, which was to fulfill her relationship with Alex. Because we know indirectly through Alex that in the previous 2 lifetimes that was not possible. For Alex, as you so wisely said, Mark, that was not possible, 1, because of alcoholism, 2, because he chose to prioritize social conventions rather than his own wise intuition.
Yeah.
Because the intuition is the voice of the soul. So he chose to silence that. For Belinda, most likely, what silenced that opportunity for her was not only Alex's choices, but also her fear of making changes in her life. So it's beautiful to see that through self-knowledge and self-love, we are able to open doors that may not have previously been opened to us and for us and by us.
And there's a lesson that we don't get much on the Hollywood movies, as you said earlier, right? I can't. As you're talking, I'm trying to think of a movie in which self-love and learning to love oneself is the central focus, and we learn about the struggles that characters have in trying to, or the successes that they face after spending, years in a way helping to improve oneself and one's self-image and feelings of confidence and recognizing themselves as valuable, loving spirits. We don't see movies like that. What we see, generally speaking, are Hollywood movies in which characters, we don't see we tend to see it as external. The Hollywood and definitely advertisers, right, want us to believe that success in life and that being loving instruments, or loving ourselves, is connected with materialist stuff. Buying things, buying a car. I'm thinking of the attachment to, just the, McDonald's comes to mind. I'm loving it. This that's deliberate. Their advertisers are playing on that, on our own need for self-love and our own, and they're trying to get us instead, not so much in any malicious way, but I mean, in a sense that they're taking that energy that need we have to find out how better to love ourselves, how better to understand ourselves, and directing it towards consumer goods. And I want to buy the latest cell phone. I gotta have that friend rather than this friend because she's got like a Maserati instead of a Toyota. You know what I mean? Like it's this desire to want to be connected with that kind of materialist stuff. And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about how important it is. And it does take time, but it's important, and there's no substitute for it. And the diaries tell us how important it is. Belinda's diary in particular is really instructive in that, about how important it is to invest our energies in learning to love ourselves and learning to love those around us who we constantly find ourselves connected with. So all this is to say that life is not a Hollywood movie, and it's so important, and we need, as I was thinking about before, let's share these stories with others. Let's start talking about these lessons. Let's talk about these cases with each other, and because it's so important
Yes,
to do that.
I feel particularly blessed for having studied the stories together with you and having brought them to life together with you in collaboration with you, Mark, because we notice by examining 3 consecutive lifetimes that what we consider everlasting this lifetime, in fact, is not. That in less than 100 years, in the case of Alex and Belinda, their lifetimes completely changed. So what we are experiencing now that may seem permanent to us is in reality very temporary. So if we literally put our hearts on material acquisitions, if those material acquisitions, as you were saying, become our north, if we attach our identity to those material acquisitions, by wanting a Lamborghini rather than a Toyota, for example, we are very likely to be frustrated if we abide only by social conventions. Why? Because this body that I'm wearing, this image that I see when I look in the mirror, the way I speak, etc., is very passing. It's not going to be long lasting, though it may seem to. It will not be long lasting. So I'm so grateful to Belinda and Alex because they both drive home the importance of prioritizing lessons for the immortal souls.
Yeah.
So if we remind ourselves every day when we look in the mirror, in addition to saying good morning, Carolina, or good morning, Mark, we can also say good morning, dear immortal soul. And we can start the day by asking ourselves, what could my priorities as an immortal soul be today? What muscle of the spirit can I exercise today? Because what we see as material acquisitions now are very different from acquisitions that we may have the opportunity to practice or have for the immortal spirit. So let me give you an example. As an immortal spirit, like Belinda, I may want to practice more self-love and let go of a fear-based mentality. But if I look at Belinda just as the physical body that she wears, the acquisition that I may want to focus on is having the perfect relationship and getting the highest scores in medical school. Though those are great goals to have, we are not dismissing them by any means. We just would like to constantly remind ourselves that these are not the only goals we should have, that we are being invited by both Alex and Belinda to see ourselves every day as immortal spirits, and as we learn through Kardec Radio, nourish our souls. So I would like to thank Belinda and Alex for being here with us every Tuesday evening to give us an opportunity to reflect upon ourselves, to encounter ourselves, and to nourish our beautiful souls. Most certainly, speaking for myself, Mark, these are lessons that I'm going to take to immortality. So Belinda and Alex, though they are fictitious characters, to me they are dear educators, dear teachers, because they showed me part of myself for which I'm very grateful for. And I look forward, Mark, to seeing the audiobook that we are going to put together, where we compile all of the Belinda and Alex episodes so we can continue, as you mentioned earlier, studying these lessons and practicing to have bifocal lenses and glasses here. While we see ourselves with a physical body, we also practice looking at ourselves as immortal spirits. And Belinda and Alex give us tools in every encounter on how to do that. So I am very grateful to both Belinda and Alex and Dr. André Moreira in Brazil, who compiled this cases in order for us to nourish ourselves.
Yeah, and let's also thank the team that Dr. Moreira worked with, who this whole set of Belinda and Alex books are a beautiful result of a collaborative effort of the work that they do in Brazil. And so, and the publishing group that they're involved with. Want to thank everybody involved with this and thank them very much for to the people at AME Editora who gave us the permissions to work with these stories. They're doing beautiful work there, and we're only likely to see more exciting things coming from them, and we want to thank them so much for putting these materials together and for trusting us with the materials to provide this to an English-speaking audience. And we're very honored to do that, and we thank them very much for that.
We are very grateful for this beautiful privilege. Those are gifts that, like we said, we are going to take with us to immortality. And we would like to thank you, dear listener.
Of course, thank you, listeners.
Has been with us since the beginning of our journey, and we know you may be wondering what's going to happen next. Don't worry, dear listener. We are here as students of the School of Life with you, and like you, we want to continue learning. So starting next week, we are starting the study of a new book with you. The book this time is a book written or put together, compiled by the Spirit Mei, M-E-I-M-E-I. If you Google her, dear listener, you will know that she used to be an educator in Brazil, and as she disincarnated, she continued to take that role. So as an educator, she brings to us the diary of a teen from the beyond, letting us know from the beyond, like Alex, what the teens or the youth that she encounters learns as they reflect upon the choices that they have made. So we look very much forward to our new journey, new study sessions with you, and we thank you profoundly, eternally, for the opportunity of nourishing our souls with your company, with the gift of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
We wish you many, many, many beautiful blessings.
This has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.